being your own boss and quitting the 9 to 5 seems to be a big goal for some people. Whether it's starting a consulting company like I did, or making a startup like I was just talking to my friend who has quit like his third, what I'd consider big tech job that he's landed again because he just really wants to do his own thing, seems to be a popular trend. But the question is, like, what are the downsides and challenges you will definitely face, and how should you be prepared in order to succeed if you decide to quit your 9 to 5 so that you're in a better position to hopefully succeed? Now, before going forward, just want to say, hey there, everyone, thanks so much for joining me here. My name is Ben Robichon, aka the Seattle Data Guy. Currently, I work as a data infrastructure and data strategy consultant, but prior to that, I worked full-time at Facebook, and my very first job was at a hospital doing data analytics in healthcare. Today, I want to discuss some of the tips I have if you are out there thinking about starting your own independent data consulting company, or perhaps, again, a startup, so that you can face some of the challenges that definitely will exist as you're trying to go through that daily grind of trying to build a company that you feel is successful. The very first tip I have, honestly, is do your best to be financially set. Like, if you can, if you have the ability to put, 3 to 6 months away, it just put yourself in a situation where you can feel that much less stressed. Because one, especially if you work at a large tech company, you're already essentially giving up this massive opportunity cost if you kind of quit and are just trying to make your own thing work. So you need to make sure you have, 3 to 6 months planned out financially, so that way you don't feel nervous and start maybe taking on work or making decisions that aren't beneficial to you just because you want to ensure that whatever you're doing works. It is one of those privileges that, especially if you work at a big tech company, you have. I think I saw a few people who have called out the fact that it didn't matter if they'd worked at a big tech company or not. Their company would have been successful, but I think there is a massive advantage that you have because you can often put away more money because you're paid a little bit more, sometimes twice the average maybe salary for a similar role. So whatever you can do to be financially steady, do it. I recommend 6 months. I said 3, but really 6 months because it takes a few months to get things going in the right direction. And that brings me to my next tip. Try to make sure you've already kind of tested out your idea. Like, don't just jump into it and be like, I've got this product and it's going to work. Do what you can early on to test out the need in the market. Consulting is probably the easiest example of this because, sometimes companies will let you do some moonlighting, or maybe they won't mind if you spend, 5 hours a month, 10 hours a month, just doing some side work, really just building out a combination of possible clients, as well as hopefully, maybe your brand, whether that's, you going and speaking. You don't have to post a ton on LinkedIn. You can go out and speak. You can go out and get another partner that maybe does the selling for you, but you have to find out some way that clients will come. So spend some time both trying to find some work ahead of time that you can get familiar with, be like, hey, do I like doing this work? But also, two, create some pipelines that actually can start leading to clients early on. Don't just jump into it expecting clients to come. You really need to make sure that there is a demand for whatever service, startup you're planning to build. Just because you see other people doing it doesn't mean there is a demand. You do need to figure out, hey, are people paying for, a specific type of consulting, or am I just assuming this? So build up a little bit of some brand. Again, it doesn't have to be online social media. You can have a meetup event that you go to a lot. You can go to speaking events and be the speaker. There are a lot of options in terms of getting attention that way. Now, once you've finally made that cut over, right? Okay, before this was kind of pre-work, right? That's day zero stuff. You already need to have some money saved so that you're not feeling stressed. And then two, make sure you kind of have some idea of who your clients are, maybe worked with a few of them, maybe have a brand that's already kind of built up. Once you've done that, next step is your next tip is really to embrace this journey, right? There are days that I don't feel like things are going the way I want. And then suddenly, you finally get through, you push past whatever it was that was blocking you, whether it was mental, whether it was just sheer amount of you needing to put out yourself and your content or speak enough events, that suddenly it starts snowballing, right? Because maybe the first 5 pieces of content or first 2 talks don't get anything, right? Because you're new, you're maybe not the best at it, but also maybe because people are just becoming familiar with you. It takes multiple touches in terms of connecting with people, often for them to eventually convert into a possible paying client. I finally had a few examples of this with some of the meetups that I've been going to. It takes time. You don't have to feel like everything's going to happen day one. It's why, again, I recommend you have some money put away, because maybe you're lucky. There are plenty of people who will post on LinkedIn who will say like, hey, after a month, I'm already making X amount. It's crazy. Some people have that happen, but arguably more people are on the other side, I'd assume, who are taking a few months, maybe a year, to really get anything going. So do take your time. Don't feel like you need to like immediately see success. And with that, when you do start seeing success, that leads you to my next tip, which is do celebrate the small wins. This is probably my worst trait amongst many, which is celebrate those small wins. If you land your first contract, if it's $500, you landed your first contract, right? Like, it doesn't matter that it's only $500. Getting your first contract is a hard thing to do. And you should celebrate it. And then obviously you don't need to celebrate every $500 contract after that, but then maybe your next celebration is like, hey, you broke your first 5-figure contract. Like, that's a big deal. If you haven't done a $10,000 contract, it's a big deal. And then break your first, above 50K, above, 100K. Like, celebrate those little wins, even if you're like looking at other people and seeing like, oh, well, they're making $1 million a year and I'm only making $200,000 a year, which is still a lot of money, to be clear. Still need to take time and celebrate these small wins, because these are going to be the first time and the last time you're going to have this small win, right? Like, after that, then you're always going to expect the next, a bigger win. So if you don't celebrate these little wins, you'll never celebrate anything. And one of the things you've probably noticed that I was kind of saying is like, there are other people in this space that might be more successful than you. Maybe they've worked harder, or maybe they just got lucky. Whichever it is, it's a combination of all of the things. You need to remember why you're doing your project. One of the things I talk about in the TFA, or the consulting course that I put together, is that you need to know your why. Like, what is it that you're doing and why are you doing it? Both for two sides, both for you, like, why are you doing this? Like, do you actually want to work as a consultant by yourself? Do you like the idea of occasionally feeling like maybe you won't have work 3 months from now? Or is that kind of freeing? Like, honestly, sometimes I learned to let that be a little more freeing. If I'm a little worried, I'm like, well, that means that month could be a break. And then ironically, I always get very busy and I never actually have that month or that free time off. But you need to remember your why. Like, what is it that you quit for? Like, why did you do this? Like, okay, you want to be independent. You think you have something that you can offer that's really unique. You want to essentially capitalize or really monetize that skill more than you would at work, because at work, even if you have a unique skill, you'll just generally be paid the average. You probably will never actually get paid for what unique skill you have. So that might be another reason. Or maybe you just really love helping people, right? Like, there's a multitude of reasons. And there's a reason you believe your skill is in high demand. So if you see that your friend is like suddenly like consulting in AI and making millions of dollars, but that's not your skill set, it might be not the best choice for you to jump into that. There's obviously good reasons too, but you need to sit there and wonder and take a moment and pause, and don't let that emotional part of you say like, hey, you should go do that because they're making, more money, and then you're jealous. And that's the reason you make the choice. The reason you make the choice is like, hey, I think I could be good at consulting in the AI space. I think I have the skill set. I'm already doing it, whatever it might be. Maybe you just need to reposition your product. That's fine if there's a good reason for it. But if it's just like you're feeling scared or fearful or letting something else drive that, that's not why you want to shift it. So that's why it's good to have a why, like both for you and then your customer. Like, why are they hiring you? And looking at those two things and saying like, okay, does this thing that maybe I'm getting either fearful or jealous of, does it fit with my why? Like, is this something that actually makes sense? Or am I just in this moment feeling like I need to do everything, right? Like, it's like when blockchain was everything, right? Like, every creator had a blockchain because they all saw their other friends doing it. They were making millions of dollars, but like, really, if you're not the first person, if you didn't research it, if you're not into it, you're just going to come off as someone trying to jump on the bandwagon. So you do need to make sure that like whatever your shift is, if you are going to shift, fits in your space and fits in that why. Like, write that down early on. It's why I have that as like one of the first things you do when you fill out this assignment, is like, make sure that why makes sense. And also kind of dovetailing into, don't let that jealousy or that fear take away from what you're doing. Set realistic expectations, right? If you see someone who is out there making twice as much as you, but they've been doing it for 3 times as long, maybe that's fine. Make sure you have realistic expectations for yourself. That is the tip. Like, don't think you should be making $1 million year one if you've only ever made $100,000 a year or something around that. It'll likely take time. Yes, you should do everything you can to be good. You should always be looking to improve your value that you offer your clients, but don't feel like day one you need to be doing that. Be real about what you can do in a day. Sometimes honestly, I'll have like 10 things in a day and I'll look at that and I'm like, realistically, I can finish 2 of these things. I want to finish 10, but I can finish 2, and I need to be okay with that. As much as, again, I always have 30 things that I want to do. My wife will remind me to always have grace, because you can't do everything. You only have so much time in a day, and you have to be very specific. And that's constantly what I'm trying to do, is like, how do I do less? How do I not take on, 10 different projects? How do I take on 2 different projects that I can be really, really good on, that I can hopefully charge more for, versus charging 10 projects that, like, maybe I don't feel like I'm doing as good of a job because I'm so scattered, right? So it's always often better to have realistic expectations and feel like, and really try to just hone in on what you're doing. Now, my final tip, if you're out there, again, trying to start your own independent consulting company or startup, or just, maybe it has nothing to do with technology anymore. Maybe you're like, I'm going to be a farmer, which is much harder than I think most of us tech people think. What is it? A tractor costs like $200,000 or something. Like, they're very expensive. It's very hard work. But whatever you're going to do, make sure you have a network of people that you can connect with and talk with, that can help you grow and help you go through all these challenges, because you will have ups, you will have downs, and it's good to kind of see other people go through those things, or at least maybe talk to someone who has gone through those things. I've got plenty of people that range from creators, who I watch and I talk to, and we connect with each other, to other people in other industries that I can connect with and be like, hey, how are you guys doing this? How can I have a friend who was actually a client of mine, who we constantly talk about our businesses and what we think would be better, both for ourselves and each other. We'll hear what the other person's saying. It's like, sounds like you could maybe do better here, or maybe you should try to figure out this problem, because it's just good to have someone you can bounce ideas off of. The thing about being, whether you want to call it an entrepreneur, a business owner, is it tends to be a little lonely, right? Like, you don't have the benefit of being an employee, where everyone's kind of dealing with the same struggle. You're dealing with a very unique set of struggles that is different from if you worked a full-time job. And it's hard because you don't have necessarily anyone to share that with. So do find people in your space that you can connect with and really feel like you can share your problems with, and they can try to provide advice, or just, be there and have a listening ear. So make sure you find that as you're going through the process, because otherwise it does get a little lonely, because you always feel like, I can't really explain this to someone who maybe isn't in the same situation. With that, guys, if you are planning to start your own consulting company, I wish you guys the best. Obviously, I have a course, which I've linked below, but I also have a free checklist. You can just go through that. It'll take you through the first 30 days. So you can start setting up a company if that's your goal. With that, guys, I do wish you the best of luck, and I will see you in the next video. Thanks all. Goodbye.